Hey everyone, welcome into the Voice of College Football. One of these shows, one of these days, we'll mix it up a little bit and I will take all of your nominations for the greatest sitcom of all time. We'll take it in a bit of a different direction and go greatest sitcom of all time. Reason that comes to mind is I was just on the phone with one of my very best friends and we were discussing the Andy Griffith Show. Just an amazing show. And if anyone in the live chat can distinguish why seasons 1 through 5 are much different than seasons 6, 7, and 8, I will give you a gold star, proverbial gold star, because I don't have actual gold stars, but I will be mighty impressed. All right, so welcome to the Voice of College Football. Here we are on a Friday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Want to remind everyone that you can catch us on Patreon at Voice of College Football. Just look up MarkRogersTV. I believe that's the best way to do it. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV. We've got a watch party coming up here in the next couple of weeks, a spring game of choice by our Voice of College Football community. So we've got a close race currently between, I think, Alabama and Miami. I think that's going to come down to our selection between Alabama and Miami of what will be our feature team for our spring game watch party. Again, at our Patreon page. So check us out there. Also, go to our site, voiceofcollegefootball.com. Check it out. Get a free mask of your favorite team. And just go to voiceofcollegefootball.com. And you get your free mask. And of course, you know what to do with the Amazon link down in the description section below. Grab that Amazon link, do your Amazon shopping right there. Our topic of the night is which group of 5 team could possibly make the college football playoff, whether it be this year, next year, or in 23 years when there's a change of committee approach. All right, we got David Greenshield on the line. The reason I thought of that topic in particular was because I saw an article on ESPN's college football page that was directed at Gus Malzahn taking over the program at UCF. And of course, they have been the closest to the college football playoff in 2017 under Scott Frost. I did not get a chance to review the article, but thought I'd serve it up as the group of 5 in the college football playoff. Let's see what David has to say tonight. David, how are we doing tonight?
Excellent, Mark Rogers. Pleasure to speak with you as always. How are you, sir?
I am doing just fine, David. What's going on?
Well, I just had to chime in. If we're going to have a watch party for the spring games, I'm here to represent the silent majority, which is Ohio State, apparently. Would like to have a watch party. By the way, Ohio State is going to allow in 20,000 fans, I hear, for the spring game. I don't know if you've heard that, Mark.
I am having trouble hearing you, and it has absolutely nothing to do with you, David. I know what the problem is, but I know also that I can't remedy that problem right now, unfortunately. So I may have to tear down my phone system and just go with the old-fashioned route because I'm having issues with my earpiece. So I think you were talking about having people at the game. That's about all I could make out of that.
Well, can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with you, David. So I'm going to have to, unfortunately, I've been having issues with my earpiece since last night. I thought I corrected the situation this afternoon, but I apparently didn't. So it's just a muffled mess. So we'll have to correct that. All right. Just go ahead and call back, David, as soon as I get this thing.
Okay, same number.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, between shows, I had to do something with my earpiece last night, and that ruined it for the rest of the next 2 shows last night. And then I did a record this afternoon, 2 records this afternoon, and it did not work then. And so then I thought I fixed it, but I know what the problem is, and I'm hoping that I don't have to buy a new earpiece because that could take a long time for that to show up. All right, so what I've got to do is I got to tear this whole thing down and pretty much start over. Is we'll see if we can get this to basically. Can everyone hear me now? No, I basically, yeah, our system's in shambles right now. Our system is in shambles. I'm just gonna have to take it off the laptop. All right, can everybody hear me now? This show's off to a rip-roaring start. Damn technology. There we go. We're down to a laptop and a phone. All right. All right. So, yeah, my thought process was first and foremost that Cincinnati's our best group of 5 program right this second. And here we got David calling back in to save the day. And David has something to say about the Buckeyes, I guess. David, how you doing today?
All right.
Now I can hear you.
Mark?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
Go. No, that's all right. Modern technology, it can sometimes disappoint you. I understand that.
Yeah, well, it's partially my fault, but I can't do anything about it right now. So.
Okay.
That's what I get for trying to. Okay? That's what I get for trying to clean my instruments there. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I had heard that about the Ohio State spring game, and I was again hoping that maybe the Ohio State spring game could be the live stream because I think it could be really interesting, especially seeing all the new quarterbacks play. Plus, as I mentioned to you when I just called, they just allowed 20,000 fans in for the spring game. So I don't know if you've heard that.
No, I hadn't. Do we know what time the Ohio State spring game is?
I would imagine. I would imagine it's noon. It's been noon for a while, so I think it's probably gonna be early.
Yeah, because I've got a listing of spring games, and it's still on that list as TBA. But okay. I don't know.
But the last few years, it's been at noon, so I'm just speculating they might do it again at noon, but you never know.
Yeah, so you're voting for an Ohio State watch party at noon on the 24th.
Being a lifelong Ohio State fan,
that would make sense. I don't know if you voted, but we've got to vote, and I believe Alabama's leaving. But I don't think that's actually going to work. But anyway, I'll not go into scheduling issues. But I think Alabama and the rest of the SEC pretty much all go on the 17th. Most of the SEC on the 17th, and Miami's got an 11 o'clock spring game, and we're going to go live right after that. So that may turn out to be the big watch party, Miami.
I haven't seen a schedule for tomorrow, Mark? Is there anything that you know of tomorrow?
Yeah, so tomorrow, North Carolina State's at 1 and Florida State's at 5, and we're going to go live after the Florida State game, so that should be about 7 or 7:30.
Got it. Yeah. Well, just to speak on the Ohio State situation, if I can, for a little bit, Mark. I know that I listened to Buckeye Talk this week, and I know, again, you guys touched upon the quarterback situation. And I know that there's been a lot of speculation about Ohio State and about C.J. Stroud. A lot of people have said that, to a degree, he's got the inside track. I think that has a lot to do with him being the first in to back up Justin Fields last year. But other than, that one run that he had against Michigan State, a blowout for a touchdown, we really didn't see him throw the ball or do much anything else. I think that there was maybe a feeling out there because of that he was because of his wheels, because he was a good runner, that that might help him out too. And that can certainly make sense, especially in college football, in the way college football is. But the one thing that I will say is, in watching Ohio State the last couple of years with Ryan Day, and especially with Justin Fields, now this made sense with Dwayne Haskins because he was a pure ball kick guy, but it didn't seem like that they were doing a whole lot of that zone read with Justin Fields like they were in the past with the J.T. Barretts and the Braxton Millers of the world. So I just wonder how much the mobility factor is going to be, a huge, determining factor in this quarterback race. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I would hope that it's not one of the 3 or 4 top factors, but I would think that it's still to be considered, of course, because it's a whole other dimension to the offense.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You still, have the benefits of having a quarterback that can run in college. And in football in general, the quarterbacks can make plays outside of the structure of the offense. But, I'm just curious to see how they all look throwing the football, just how accurate they are and, how good of decision makers they are and those things. That's, I think, the thing that really moves the needle the most, of course. And like I said, Ryan Day is not running necessarily a lot of the same concepts that Urban was running with, zone read and all of that. So, that's really what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, for me, my selection of a quarterback would be first and foremost who makes the right decisions when they throw the football. Who can throw the football the best and also makes the right decision.
Right. Yeah. To me, it's decision making and accuracy. Because more games are lost than they are won in football, so you got to be able to take care of the ball. And then obviously, can you be accurate? Can you put the ball on the money? So, yeah, to me, I think that goes without saying. That's why I think, a lot of times arm strength can be, overrated. Used to have that, remember people years ago had gotten enamored with Jamarcus Russell with his arm strength and how far he could throw it. But if you don't make good decisions and you're not accurate, how's that going to work out at the next level, right?
Yeah, and that's another point is, we're having a discussion about 3 Ohio State quarterbacks that are trying to prove themselves at the collegiate level, which Marcus Russell, he was an outstanding collegiate player. What's the difference between what he experienced at LSU versus the NFL? And there's certainly, it's pretty well confirmed that he didn't take the job as seriously as he needed to. I don't know if that was all there was to it, but he didn't realize what the responsibility was of being an NFL quarterback in regards to film study, leadership, and applying yourself, being the hardest worker on the team.
Sure, yeah. You find that out real quickly once you get to the next level, that's for sure.
And to your point, David, and I was just going to say to your point, also just the jump up in the complexity of the offense.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I've watched a little bit of tape on these guys that are the Ohio State quarterbacks. I am really impressed with McCord and, what I saw from Miller as well. I think that whoever gets the job, I'm still going to feel really confident because I think as a group, I think Ohio State could have, and this is where I would be very interested to see. Mark, have you given any thought of doing those position rankings?
Well, I probably should. I'm sure we'll do them to some degree. I can't say one way or the other. I've not decided whether we'll do position rankings or not. Are you talking within the conference or nationally?
Well, nationally would be a good way to do it, or the conference. I mean, either one would be cool. I mean, just it's kind of an interesting breakdown to see because I mean, just bottom line, where I was going with that is I think Ohio State could have the best group of receivers in the country this year. In fact, I'm pretty confident that they are, especially having Wilson and Olave back, and then they have the best recruiting.
I would agree. Yeah.
But no doubt about it, I think that's going to be a big asset to these quarterbacks going forward. Both tackles back, but I'm going to be interested to see the offensive line, how the interior looks. I know they've got some guys that they got to replace, but I think it'll be pretty strong up front. I think the running back situation is going to be really interesting. I really think Brian Williams could be something, though. I think that I'm not the biggest Keith fan in the world, so I'm really interested to see what he's going to be doing next week. And how many carries he gets.
Master Teague's a stiff runner. There's just not a whole lot of just in addition to not being elusive or changing directions, he also runs in a very stiff manner. He's a good back. He's more than serviceable. I'll place him well above serviceable, but I just don't know that he's the guy that you want at Ohio State. Carrying the ball 18 to 22 times in a college football playoff game.
Right. Well, maybe I was too tough on Uncle Lou's show because I called him Uncle Lou after the national championship game and basically said that Teague is nothing more than a glorified fullback. You think that's too harsh, Mark?
That might be a little strong. I would think if Master Teague was at 9 different schools in the Big Ten, at least, that they would love to have him. And Ohio State should love to have him as well. Again, the expectations at that program and what they can get away with for 90% of their schedule versus what they have to be ready to face on an off week, let's say, if much of the rest of the teams having an off week when they play Iowa or Penn State, or then certainly Big Ten championship game and most certainly playoff.
Right.
It's the reason why Dabo Swinney benched Kelly Bryant a few games into the season, even though they were going to win every game that season, because he could see that based on their 2017 performance and scoring 6 points in a playoff game against Alabama, and that they weren't noticeably struggling in the passing game. If you look at Kelly Bryant's numbers through a few games, he was just looking forward, saying, I've got the kid on the bench that can make this happen, and even if he doesn't, this is the move I need to make to win a national championship. And he was right.
Right. Well, I think when Bryant got kind of exposed in that semifinal game against Alabama in 2017, I think that kind of started to put the writing on the wall.
Sure. Yeah.
So, one last thing about the Ohio State spring game before I get to your topic that you brought up today, Mark. Back seven of the defense is going to be the biggest thing, and most Ohio State fans know it. I think the linebackers at last year were average at best, and I didn't think they were necessarily great on the defense that was dominant in 2019. I thought they were a little bit weaker last year, mainly because I thought they lost their best linebacker off of 2019, which was Malik Garrison. Mm-hmm. So I didn't think that they were necessarily that great last year. So maybe some fresh faces there will help. I wish Dallas Gant was playing in the spring game. I've seen him play a little bit. I think he's flashed a little bit, and he's got some potential. The secondary is the whole key to the deal. They've got to find corners. as seen by that title game. And, I'm hopeful that some of the recruits that they brought in, they've got some high-ranked guys at there, of course, but they've got to find both corners and they've got to find some safeties they can cover. So, that's going to be a big thing to watch.
What's going to be very intriguing is exactly what you bring up there. We're going to have the best wide receiver core in the nation, or arguably the best, going up against a secondary that struggled. So just to watch those one-on-one matchups or zone at times, just to see if they can hold their ground. If they don't get too absurdly exposed, that's going to be a plus. That's going to be something to be hopeful about. If the secondary can just look decent.
Right. No, I agree. I think that it's important for them to not only find, at least, two good corners, but then also have to find some depth. So, yeah, it's a big question. I wanted to get to your topic, Mark. You brought up the non-Power 5.
Yep.
I think that, and I touched upon this with you before, but I wanted to get at it this year. I think if there was ever an obvious year with the schedule for a non-Power 5 to make it, doesn't it have to be Cincinnati this year because of the way the schedule falls?
Oh, absolutely. I am going to be fascinated. I think for anybody who is rooting for chaos, or for anyone who's rooting for the group of 5, what we all need to be rooting for is for Cincinnati to win those 2 huge non-conference games and then run the table, of course, in conference play. So it's kind of a 3-step process. They need to beat Indiana and Notre Dame. Then they need to win the conference and hopefully in an undefeated fashion. And then have Notre Dame and Indiana turn in really good seasons.
Yes, right. Well, remember the one year, Mark, I think it was 16, when Houston upset Oklahoma early on in the season that year, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's it. I think we've kind of talked about the test. You have to have, now Cincinnati's lucky this year. They can end up having 2 top 10 to 15 teams on their schedule. So if Notre Dame and Indiana at least go 10-2, let's say, and finish in the top 15 or top 10, then you're dead on right. And then they catch an opponent within their conference, maybe a Memphis, somebody like that ends up being in the top 15 as well. Maybe 3 top 15 opponents while going undefeated. Now, I think you're of the belief too, Mark, that they've got to probably catch some. Now, do you believe that they could make it in over a 1-loss, Power 5 conference champion, or you think you have to have a bunch of 2-loss teams out there?
Wow. Look at Clemson's schedule. Well, shoot, Clemson's got to play Georgia this year, of course. But if Clemson loses to Georgia and they're a 1-loss ACC champion, they could have just the rest of their schedule and their wins could be so insignificant. They don't play anybody that's supposed to be, we'll have to see the season play out and see who improves and who declines. But based on the way it looks, their schedule is atrocious. They play their non-division games are against Georgia Tech and I believe Pitt. Yes, Pitt this year. And then the Atlantic Division, of course, and then South Carolina. The best team on Clemson's schedule other than Georgia's got to be, it's either North Carolina State or it's Louisville or it's Florida State or BC or Wake Forest. Well, they're all about the same. They just don't play anybody. So if they lose a game,
well, let me ask you this, Mark. Who do you expect to be the second best team in the ACC right now? I don't know if you've already ranked your ACC teams from top to bottom, but would you say it's North Carolina?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Now, they would not get North Carolina until the title game.
Exactly. So they would have the championship game win, yes. Yeah.
Right. Which, let's say North Carolina's at least the top 20 to maybe top 15 team, which I think is reasonable.
David, if all those teams we're talking about on Clemson's schedule are basically what they are and have shown us to be the last couple of years, there's no drastic improvement by anybody. And then they beat North Carolina, who, let's say North Carolina is 9-3, and they beat them in the ACC championship game, and they're a top 15 team.
Right.
All those other games are going to be the best games on their schedules is going to be a bunch of 7-5 teams. They're not going to have any ranked wins until the ACC championship game. Cincinnati may have 3 ranked wins and Clemson 1.
Right, because who's going to be the second best team in Cincinnati? It's going to be probably Memphis again.
Probably.
Okay, and they could end up playing Memphis twice if I'm not mistaken, right?
Sure. There you go.
So they could get a 4th data point there and I'm speaking, of course, of if they're a good team and they get to beat them twice, and then they beat a good Indiana and then a good Notre Dame team. So, yeah, that's where I'm going with that. See, I just have a hard time believing, and you brought this up before, I think, Mark, this is where I got it from you, I think, is that the one-loss conference champion of the major Power 5 usually gets the advantage even over an undefeated champion like Cincinnati, I think.
Sure.
And that even if Cincinnati gets those quality wins, I still think a one-loss champion would still get the advantage. Just bottom line, right?
I guess, but it doesn't add up. This year, it doesn't add up because, again, we're making a lot of assumptions before the season. But if the ACC is still the ACC, and if Cincinnati wins those 2 games against top 10 to 15 opponents, we haven't had that kind of scenario. UCF went undefeated, and I'm trying to think what their big non-conference win was that year. I don't think they beat anybody of significance. I think it was Georgia Tech. I'll look it up.
Yeah, you may be right. I think that, because the last, Houston was the one that came up, the last, non-Power 5, really major non-conference win. Of course, that was 16 when they beat Oklahoma, because Ohio State beat Oklahoma the next week that year. I remember that.
Yep. So, in 2017, UCF, their big non-conference win, they won at Maryland, 38-10. Well, Maryland wasn't any good. And that was it for their non-conference. Their non-conference wins were Florida International, Maryland, Austin Peay. There must have been a 4th. I can't find a 4th. FIU, Maryland, Austin Peay. No, they only played 3 non-conference games, according to this.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't have a significant. They had no significant wins, anything close to what Cincinnati. We're asking a lot of Cincinnati, first of all, but
sure,
it has to be assumed to make the discussion. But yeah, for Cincinnati to go through to run the table in their conference and to beat Indiana and Notre Dame is a big ask. But if they're able to do that, then I think they have a better resume. Again, if teams that are projected to be what they're supposed to be, then they're going to have a better resume than Clemson.
Right. Yeah. I haven't looked enough at Cincinnati's roster to see how much turnover that Luke Fickell had there. I know that he had, obviously they became within an eyelash of going undefeated and having a great win over Georgia in that bowl game last year. So, I just don't know how much they've lost. But you're right, though. At least the path is out there with the non-conference opponents. I wonder, though, this year, Mark, By the way, did you do Big Ten rankings already, or with kind of like a preseason Big Ten rankings?
No, I did not.
Okay. Because I think Indiana maybe takes a little bit of a step back this year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they couldn't still be the second best team in the conference, but I don't know. I could see a step back this year, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah, I could. I could see a step back from Indiana. I would actually be surprised if they didn't take a step back to 8-4 territory.
Right. That's true. All right. Well, as always, a pleasure, Mark.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it. And again, sorry for the inconvenience, and thanks for calling back.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk college football with you, Mark. Have a good night.
Appreciate it. All right. I believe we've got another call coming in. Before I take that, Clemson schedule. And let's just give a quick take projected record for these teams. Okay, we're going to assume, based on the conversation I just had with David, that Clemson loses to Georgia because that puts them in jeopardy. So they've lost to Georgia. Now, if they lose close, the committee's going to take that very lightly. But if they lose by a couple scores, okay. Okay, South Carolina State, that does nothing for them. Georgia Tech's a 3-9 team. NC State's a 7-5 team. Boston College, 6-6, 7-5 team. Syracuse, 3-9, 4-8 team. Pitt, 6-6, 7-5 team. Florida State, 6-6, 7-5 team. They hope. Louisville, 6-6, 7-5 team. UConn, doesn't matter. Wake Forest, 7-5 team at best. South Carolina on the road, 4-8 team. That's Clemson's schedule. ACC championship game against North Carolina or Miami, most likely. All right, let's take a call here. We had a disconnection of sorts, did we? Really? Let me get the number up here, 860-499-3332. And for those of you who joined us right off the top, I apologize for the rough beginning. Here's my earpiece. This is what I attempted to clean. And that's the source of my issue right there. And then I tried to air it dry and to get all of that liquid out of there, but I cannot hear anything through my earpiece. And that completely tears down everything else. Can't use the mic, can't use the sound system. Yeah. So just so we can talk college football with you tonight, we'll have to address those issues later. You can contribute to the Voice of College Football at Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Appreciate that. Also, you get a free mask. You get a free mask by registering for free at voiceofcollegefootball.com. We've got 35 teams represented, so most likely you're in good shape. All the major teams, for the most part, 35 teams. Get your free mask at voiceofcollegefootball.com. If you don't want a mask, I would still ask that you would check us out at voiceofcollegefootball.com. We built that site about 6 weeks ago, and we will be adding more to it. We're going to have a watch party of a spring game on Patreon coming up to be announced. I asked for everyone's feedback and took a poll, and the poll winner will rule the day, and we'll do a watch party featuring most likely Alabama, Miami, Ohio State, or somebody of that caliber. Got Matthew back in the chat here. Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten again. Dennis, I like how Big Ten fanboys elevate Indiana. Elevate Indiana. We were actually talking about Indiana losing. That entire discussion was based on Indiana losing to Cincinnati. I don't know how that's elevating Indiana. The whole discussion I just had with David was predicated on Indiana losing to Cincinnati, and that's elevating Indiana, not understanding. Louis, great to have you here. Appreciate that. Mike 3883, to your point about Northwestern, I looked at preseason, postseason rankings for all the Power 5 teams across the board. And what was funny about Northwestern is, and this is true Northwestern, the last 5 times that Northwestern has been ranked in the final AP poll, they were unranked in the preseason poll. I am guessing that no other team could make that claim in college football, that they consistently finished ranked in the top 25. That's 5 of the last 7 seasons, and in none of those seasons were they ranked in the preseason top 25. Dennis, again, for us to have the discussion about Cincinnati, we were making the assumption about Indiana being a top 15 team. Not because we're making the assumption that they will be a top 15 team, but to have that conversation, to lift up Cincinnati, we had to elevate Indiana to top 15 status. I'm not making that assumption either. I could definitely see Indiana going 7-5 or 8-4. Trying to think where I had Indiana in my preseason rankings, my way too early top 25. I think I had them in the 20 range, something like that. Thank you, D-Rock Irish. Here's my next ask for everyone. We've got 22 total channels, team channels. Florida State, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Oregon. Oklahoma, Florida State, Nebraska, and Oregon are all close to 1,000 subs. If those are some of your teams that you would like to track, then certainly subscribe for the content. Or if you just want to help us build the channel, we need to get to 1,000 subs on our channels. So please subscribe there. Oregon, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Florida State in particular. Dennis is saying, you said Cincinnati would have 2 top 15 wins if they beat Notre Dame and Indiana. Assuming Indiana is a top 15 team is a theme Big Ten fanboys have this preseason. Okay, Dennis, one more time. We started the discussion was not about Indiana. The discussion was about Cincinnati. And to trying to figure out a way to give a group of 5 team a chance. So look at the title of today's video. Our live stream is titled Group of 5 Playoff Contender, something to that degree, something in that range. So our conversation is about who from the group of 5 could possibly make a bid for college football playoff appearance this year. And the team that has the opportunity to do that is Cincinnati, because they played 2 prominent Power 5 teams in Notre Dame and Indiana, and they play in the best group of 5 conference, okay? And they were the best group of 5 team last year, okay? All those things put together, okay? For the sake of the conversation of Cincinnati presenting a case to the College Football Playoff Committee, it would help immensely if Indiana was really good. We're not evaluating Indiana. We're not making an assumption on Indiana. We're talking about for Cincinnati to have a better claim and resume, Indiana needs to be really good. Okay. Thank you, Louis. Good to see Sooner Thrawn. Sooner, we talked to our guy Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football today, Oklahoma. Good stuff there. Here again, we're not understanding, Dennis. In the scenario presented, Indiana would be a prominent Power 5 team. Was Kansas a prominent Power 5 team in 2007? They were, yes. They almost won the national championship. They went 12-1, won a major bowl game. They were a prominent Power 5 team in 2007. Indiana, if they go 10-2, would be a prominent Power 5 team. I'm here, Dennis. The number's at the bottom of the screen, 860-499-3332. It's not about digging holes. We are presenting a scenario. So when you present a scenario, this is how it goes in presenting a scenario, Dennis, that you have to make assumptions. You have to build the scenario. That was just part of the scenario. We were making assumptions about Notre Dame being good. We were making assumptions about Cincinnati winning the conference undefeated. All right, good to see another call coming in here concerning the Buckeyes, Ohio State's quarterback battle. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? The call dropped. Hello, hello. Who's on the line? I may have to reconnect, possibly.
Studios host.
Okay. Got a call coming in from Cincinnati University. I think it's actually University of Cincinnati, would it be? Hello, it's the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Okay.
Then I'm gone.
David. Hello? You with us?
Are we still here?
Yeah, what happened there? I don't know. I'm having all sorts of issues tonight. It started, I am not going to try to explain what our issues are tonight.
No,
you would think
look,
the whole sound system comes
all
down
good.
because of an earpiece. Basically, I have to shut everything down. How you doing tonight?
I'm finding yourself, sir.
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Let me ask you, because I don't know the answer to this question. When Coach Frick was at Ohio State, what was his position there?
Luke Fickell?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, his most recent position was defensive coordinator. He was a defensive line coach before that.
Okay, well,
Let's see what the years are.
you know, I think if you look at his success at Cincinnati University, he obviously
he knows what he's doing, right?
Absolutely, he does.
So, like from that standpoint, when you think about how well they played, okay, I didn't see the live game. Cincinnati played Georgia, but I went back and looked at it, and they played them pretty admirably. It was even.
They sure did.
I think the final score was it 21-19, or am I wrong about that?
24-21. But they
yeah, definitely wrong.
But they were down. They were down 21-19. So you had that right. They were down 21-19. Georgia kicked a field goal with just a few seconds left in the game to go up 22-21. That appeared to be what the final score was going to be, 22-21. But Cincinnati threw around one of these crazy laterals all over the field, and they played themselves into a safety on the last play of the game. It was inconsequential. Therefore, the final score was 24-21. And just to be accurate, I knew that Luke Fickell coached a position on the defense, and since he was a defensive lineman at Ohio State, I assumed it was the defensive line. But just to be accurate, before he was the defensive coordinator, co-defensive coordinator, he was coached the linebackers.
Mark, I think when you look at what he's done with the Cincinnati program, even when Brian Kelly was there, they had some moments, right? I think they had gone undefeated, but I'm not here to talk about Brian Kelly, but Cincinnati has had some decent moments in their recent football career or history. And then if you look at what their recent coaches done, I think he's done yeoman's work. He's probably done a lot more than a lot of other coaches could.
Yeah, Cincinnati's had a nice run. Certainly in the Big East, they were a factor. And as you mentioned, Brian Kelly's last team was really good. Now, they certainly had to step up in competition in the Sugar Bowl that year, and Florida just kicked them all over the place. And then Tommy Tuberville was there, Tommy Tuberville had a tremendous career, but Cincinnati was his last stop, and it wasn't too pretty. And he handed it off to Luke Fickell, who had one season to adjust, and since then they've been great.
So, what do you think is special about the Ohio State coaching staff? Jeff Hafley went over to Boston College and has done very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute that all to?
Well, the individual head coaches have so much to do with it, but even just the school itself and how much they're able to pay assistants, because Jim Tressel has a litany of tremendous coaches that coached under him as well. It's a combination of things. You have to be at a school that can pay that kind of money, and for a long time, Ohio State was one of the few, if not the only, school in the Big Ten that was going to compete with SEC teams in paying assistant coaches. So that had a lot to do with it.
So, sorry to keep jumping all over the place. Jumping back to Cincinnati, I think as long as Coach Fickell's there, they're going to be a very solid team. And I think that the remarkable thing that he does is he has to recruit against the Ohio State University, right?
Mm-hmm. And
for those
Kentucky.
Players that are not only inside the state, but say in Pennsylvania, Michigan, not so much Indiana. Indiana is it gets more basketball recruits than even Pete Werner, I think, was from Indianapolis. But it's not so many football players from Indiana. But so he's going up against stiff competition, and there's also Miami of Ohio. I don't know. Does Cincinnati reach into, like, say, Dade County and some of the Florida and Georgia geographical areas? I'm asking. I don't know.
Everybody recruits Florida, but you also have to consider. You also have to consider where Cincinnati's located. They're almost. I've had people that have lived and worked and been from the Cincinnati area that almost consider themselves as much part of Kentucky or just to be their own state. They don't identify in many ways with the rest of Ohio. I had a friend who lived in Kentucky and he was 10 minutes away from his job in Cincinnati. So you've got Louisville just a couple hours away, and Lexington, the home of University of Kentucky, very close. West Virginia's a bordering state, vying for talent as well.
So, my last question, and I'll let somebody else get on the line, but because I believe that he is going to continue to do well, but do you believe that Coach Fickell is going to continue to keep Cincinnati on a higher trajectory where, as opposed to them just, I don't want to say flatline, but just kind of stay where they're at? I think that they're going to continue to do well, and that people are going to notice them, and that some good football players are going to want to come and play there. What do you think?
I am making my way through the Cincinnati roster as we speak, and what is stunning about the locations of these players is that Luke Fickell, for as well as he's done, he's fortunate that the high school football in Cincinnati is really good. There are a couple, and I'm not a high school football guy, so I couldn't even tell you what high schools they are. I'd have to look through here. Like St. Xavier, yes, and LaSalle. They have like 3 national powerhouse football teams, football programs in Cincinnati. And I don't know if you're going to see any roster in the country that is going to have a higher concentration of players from one city than you're going to see on Cincinnati's roster. Tons of these kids are from Cincinnati.
So we can almost eliminate, like, Columbus, Ohio, right?
Oh, well, at that not necessarily, David, because Ohio State, there are, I think in the last 2 classes, Ohio high school football players, there were, in one of the classes of the last 2, 9 4 and 5 stars, and in one there was 12. So Ohio State's going to get the majority of that, and they're going to sign probably 6 or 7 3-stars, and they don't want anything to do with the rest of the state's football players.
Okay. So that's an open opportunity for other coaches.
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah. Because I see Ohio State as a national recruiting. They're not just going to stay in the backyard when they can go out to California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever it may be, and pull out a 5-star or a highly regarded 4-star and create that competition within the positions, right? And so I don't want to drift into an Ohio State conversation because you do that all the time because of your different programs that you have, and with Steve and the rest of the guys, which is a very good program. I love that. So what I'm saying is that I've heard, and Mark, you're from Ohio, right?
Yes.
I'm not from Ohio, so I've heard that Ohio's like a stockpile of really good football talent.
It's lessening.
So they have some opportunities, Cincinnati does. And what I meant by my last remark is you have your designated Ohio State, Nebraska, Michigan shows. I wasn't trying to divert the conversation into Ohio State, but okay, yeah, I think Cincinnati's just gonna stay in place and do very well, and I think that's really something he should be accommodated for because he's proven to be an awesome coach with some very ardent situations to deal with.
David, Luke Fickell has 35 players from Cincinnati on his roster, from Cincinnati high schools.
Wow.
35.
Wow. Ronan. Ronan show up like a bad STD.
I don't know.
He drinks the water and he keeps coming back.
I don't know if I'm upsetting Ronan or I'm pleasing Ronan, but he loves to check out the helmet, so I'm just mixing it up, just to get a reaction.
Yeah, hey, let me get off here. I'm really impressed with Cincinnati's coach, and I'm sure he was a big loss to the Ohio State coaching staff, man. But you guys have had a tremendous amount of really good coaches at Ohio State. That's just nuts.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's been a good run for the Buckeyes in the Big Ten, and we'll see when somebody finally knocks them off. But my goodness.
Hey, it's not going to be anytime soon. Anyway, Mark,
yes,
thank
David.
you. It's always a pleasure. And let somebody else get in on here.
Appreciate that, David. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
One of my favorite statistics in outlining Ohio State's dominance in the Big Ten is that Ohio State's worst record in the Big Ten, their worst record. Okay, we're going to take out the Luke Fickell year. That's a bit of a condition there, but we're going to take out 1 year interim head coach, not the Luke Fickell that we have now at Cincinnati, but he inherited a rough situation. 5 of his best offensive players suspended. His best wide receiver, his best running back, his quarterback, his best offensive lineman, arguably his best offensive lineman, suspended for the 2011 season. And Ohio State lost a string of one-score games. So if you exclude the interim coach season, Ohio State's worst record in the Big Ten since 2004, 17 years ago, 7-1. 7-1. All right. D-Rock Irish wants a helmet count. 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 17 helmets. Unless you want to count this. Well, that's the big number 18. Love the Rebels. Got, the actual Ole Miss helmet right here. Matt Corral, eat your heart out. There we go. Okay. Where's the U? Ronan, for everything that Ronan does for this channel, he pretty much can call the shots. So, Ronan, where do you want it? We just want to, do that? Okay. just want to. There you go. That's for Ronan. There you go. There we go. Yes, I get sued up for the Canes, especially considering Miami and Manny Diaz get criticized for too much seniority on the team. If you want seniority, want tenure, you know, I'm not filling in the blank with my age, but I would definitely get a starting spot at linebacker for the Canes. Yeah, especially once they saw the gear on. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. And again, I apologize. I'm going to have some work to do. Man, I had so much other work to do, like marketing stuff. I just joined Cameo today. Do you guys know what Cameo is? Just joined that today. They approved my application. I met with those folks today. But I've got all sorts of people suggesting like places like Clubhouse and all these other places I don't know anything about. TikTok. We'll have to get on there and drum up some business. But now I got to fix my phone system. Michigan did go down hard. I think Michigan's was the one that made the loudest crash. I think it was definitely Michigan, and that was apropos. Oh, Ronan wants some Whitney out of me. Ronan, you suggested, what was it? You suggested, oh, I Have Nothing. I don't know that I know the words to that song, I Have Nothing. I don't know if I played the, if I would play the karaoke version on my other computer over here, if we would get flagged for copyright infringement. You know, YouTube jumps on you. Like, it's unbelievable what YouTube does. There was one time that I was doing a live call-in show, live stream of some sort, and I had a window open on another laptop, and it started to play an ad for like 3 seconds, and I shut it off. And this is very odd. Oh, people are calling the other phone line. That must be George. That would be my, I would bet $100 that that's George. What was I talking about? Oh, we had a call-in show, had a live stream of some sort. And I had a window open on a laptop and an ad played with some music for like 3 seconds before I clicked it off. I got a notification from YouTube. They jumped all over that. That at 8 minutes and 48 seconds into that video, you played 3 seconds of, I'm like, oh my word. Back off. It's gracious. David, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for the contribution there. Ronan, where would you envision yourself playing college football? Oh, come on, David. But David, appreciate that. David would tell you, though, that the most effective way to contribute to the voice of college football would be at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Have you guys checked out the videos recently? My goodness, I've been working like a man, huh? But then again, it's pretty much standard. Somebody actually mentioned to me the other day, they said, you know, Mark, you were doing more videos when you had a full-time job than you are now. And I said, you know what? You're right. I was doing too many videos, and now we're trying to actually build a business here. Is what we're trying to do. But my goodness, we've got Texas A&M to be released tomorrow. A spring update with Texas A&M from Andrew Hattersley on Gig'em 247. Andrew knows his stuff. Check out the Texas A&M video that we've got released early tomorrow morning. That was a great discussion. Today's video that we released about 3 hours ago. Did you guys check this out on USC? If you want to hear somebody who knows USC football and is accomplished and a credible source, Ryan Abraham from 247 Sports, USCFootball.com. He joined us. We released that video a couple hours ago on USC. Of course, this morning, released a video on Michigan featuring Justin Rowe. Had a great conversation. I am hurt that this only has 214 views. I had a great conversation with big game James Coleman, who played under Bobby Bowden. And so as soon as I heard that Bobby Bowden had received the Florida Medal of Honor, Medal of Freedom, whatever it is, and also knew that James had interviewed Mike Norvell, I contacted James immediately, got him on. He said, absolutely, I'm walking the dog. I'll jump on as soon as I can. We had a great conversation because James Coleman always brings it. Always brings it. So we had James on. James gave me 39 minutes of content talking about Mike Norvell, the Seminoles, Bobby Bowden. Just great behind-the-scenes stuff with Bobby Bowden, what the man is all about, was all about, and continues to be all about in his later years. That was a great conversation. I hate to see 214 views because usually when I post Florida State stuff, it does well. Not this time. We had Clemson this week, Arkansas, Oklahoma, more Michigan, more USC, more Florida State, Oregon, more from Clemson. Had my Big Ten coaches rankings, which I don't have a whole lot of incentive to do the SEC or the Big 12 because they're not doing that well. So that really hasn't been worth my time. Ohio State football talk, of course. Florida State on Wednesday night. LSU, Iowa, Nebraska. Who don't we cover here? Okay. All right. Georgia, Alabama, Wisconsin. That's in the last couple of weeks. So, David, thank you so much for that. But again, David would tell you that the best way to contribute would be Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. All right. Again, my apologies about the phone situation, but I believe everybody has been able to call in that needed to call in. You still call the number at the bottom of the screen, 860-499-3332. Hopefully I didn't crack any of those mini helmets. Need somebody back there some stagehand to pick up this mess. Sooner Thrawn, who let everyone know earlier in the chat to join us on Patreon. We're going to have a watch party, a spring football watch party to be announced. Mark, isn't it amazing, Baylor, a program 20 years ago, the coach tried to frame a guy for murder and not a traditional program, rolls to a title on Monday. Yeah, we're talking college basketball here, but that's a different animal, of course, with college basketball because you can turn it around quickly with 2 or 3 players. As long as the other guys are serviceable, and then you put together like 2 or 3. And I don't know what Baylor's deal is. I turned the national championship game on the other night, and I totally forgot about that there was even a national championship game. The most enjoyable portion of the tournament for me was watching the Gonzaga-UCLA game, watching like the last half and overtime, something like that. I really watched like the last 3 minutes of the game. I remembered sometime at 11:30 or something that there was actually a national championship game, and I turned it on and it was over. But yeah, that's crazy. Thank you, D-Rock. This show's all over the place tonight. It's just all over the place. I did want to talk about a group of 5 teams that had a legitimate chance. Really, as I've stated many times, they don't have a legitimate chance because the playoff committee will not let them in. UCF was undefeated, and they were 13th, I believe, in the final rankings prior to postseason play, the rankings that matter. I think they were 12th. And Cincinnati was, what, 9th? Undefeated, 9th? So But in terms of those group of 5 programs, that what caught my eye was ESPN.com, its college football site, had an article about Gus Malzahn and winning a championship at UCF. And I don't think they were talking about the American Conference because that's obviously already in play. Thank you so much, Ronan. Yeah, we had a great conversation on Virginia Tech football. And I got to tell you guys, for those of you that care anything about the business side of this, is I would love to do live shows on everybody I could possibly do. I would do like 3 to 5 shows per day. Who is calling on that aborted number? That thing was supposed to be shut down a long time ago. Anyway, I'd love to do a ton of live shows. I hate, I think it's kind of funny, but I somewhat hate when people accuse me of favoring certain teams because they have live shows. No, it has to do with the popularity of that particular team, and it has to do with putting together a decent panel of people that know what they're talking about. So right now we're focused on Ohio State, Florida State, and Miami. And then last week we added Nebraska. Now we'll do some one-offs from time to time with Clemson and last night Virginia Tech. But the Virginia Tech show was tremendous with Mike McDaniel and Paul Van Wagner, both of ESPN Blacksburg. So thank you so much for that, Ronan. And the Florida State shows are fun. We did our 100th Florida State show. NHL picks. I'm liking the Edmonton Oilers with Gretzky and Fury. Great team out there to take on the Islanders with Mark Messier. Well, yeah, Sooner Thrawn. I think that's what it comes down to, is that if they go to 8, then they will hopefully give an automatic berth to a group of 5. That's what I think is right and fair. Or you eliminate them. One of the better live streams we had was about 2 months ago when we presented our playoff format. And all of you guys chimed in, and that was a fun show to present my playoff format. I first presented my scheduling system, then the playoff format. And part of that was the first decision that needs to be made. The very first decision after the scheduling's fixed, because that sets up a reasonable and effective way to select the playoff teams. And actually, in my system, you don't even select the teams. People can't get their mind around that. In the NFL, is anyone selecting the playoff teams? No. They're self-selected. The system selects the teams. Nobody's selecting the teams. I want to build a system that does not select teams. People do not select the teams. That's not the way it should be. But to get back to that, after the schedule's fixed, first decision that should be made, somebody with some guts. I would use another word, but I'm going to stay with guts. Somebody that's got some guts, make the decision. Do we include the group of 5 or not include the group of 5? Right now, they're included in quotes, but they're not included because we never select them. David and I had the conversation tonight, and we came up with the best team in the group of 5, winning the best conference, undefeated, and then playing 2 opponents that a group of 5 team hardly ever plays to that degree, Indiana and Notre Dame, having to win all that, and then trying to come up with a scenario in which there would be a Power 5 champion that would be so lousy or so compromised, like Clemson could be with their schedule this year, to somehow possibly get a group of 5 team in. And this is not to back and support and push the group of 5. I'm just saying, make a decision. somebody make a decision. And this is why there needs to be a governing body. We saw it during this pandemic year. This is when there needed to be a commissioner of college football during this pandemic year, because everybody did whatever they wanted to. And the conferences were not on the same page. And it hurt the sport. So decision number one, after the schedule is fixed using our formula, and I don't care what the decision is, actually, include the group of 5, exclude the group of 5, one or the other, not this in-between state where we are right now, where technically they're included, but they're really not included. We've had 7 years, and we've had 4 teams in the group of 5 go undefeated. Wait a minute. Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina this past year, and San Jose State. Although San Jose State didn't play that many games. Okay. UCF in 2017, UCF in 2018, right? Yes. 4, depending on how you count, 4 or 5 group of 5 teams in the last 4 football seasons. None of them anywhere close to getting in. Not even close. Not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, 9 at the best. Cincinnati this past year. So, make a decision. Include them or exclude them, I don't care. But if you include them, formally include them and say, we've got 1 spot for the group of 5. And I outlined in our live stream that we all took part in, that was a fun time, how I would determine that group of 5 team. Anthony, all right, what do we got here? Mark, do you think in order for teams like Cincinnati and UCF to legitimately have a chance for the college football playoff, Cincinnati might have to go to the Big Ten and UCF will have to go to the ACC? Well, yes, I do. Forget who we're talking about, Cincinnati, UCF, anybody. As soon as you're in a Power 5 conference, then you're on equal footing with everyone else. Or so we think. Let's not kid ourselves. Not even those teams are on equal footing. There was a Wisconsin team that was undefeated going into the Big Ten championship game that was still what were they at that point? They really weren't considered. As it all played out, you had a Wisconsin team that went 13-1, lost a Big Ten championship team to an Ohio State team that eventually finished in the top 4 in the country, and they lost by 6 points, and they weren't even anywhere close to getting in the playoff. No calls. If you shop Amazon, please use the link that we're giving you in the description section of the videos. If you shop Amazon, please use the link in the description section. Please. What else do we got here? We got a mask for everyone. As Sooner Thrawn has told you tonight, and also Ronan, join us on Patreon. It's 16 cents per day. I think if you round up, it's 17 cents. So no false advertising here. 17 cents per day if you round up. We've got a watch party coming up for I don't want to say, still to be decided, spring game. And that's where you get your free mask. And even if you don't want a mask, check out voiceofcollegefootball.com. And as always, full transparency, You're not going to find anything necessarily there that you can't find on all the channels. It's just a relisting of the videos and so forth, but check it out. Just check it out. We're off to a good start there. We have built a platform that we think is going to be really good to continue to build things like fantasy football leagues and predictions. And I love the call that we received from our guy, Kevin from Dallas, Georgia. That was confusing on the voice recognition for a while with Kevin. Kevin from Dallas, Georgia. I didn't know if he was wanting to talk about Georgia, and he was from Dallas, Texas. Anyway, Kevin brought up a few weeks ago that he would like me to name my all-time teams at the major powers: Texas, Alabama, Notre Dame, etc. But I think we've come up with a better, we've taken Kevin's amazing idea, which I've thought of other times, of course. Anybody who does what I do is thinking of all-time rankings and all that business all the time, which brings me to, working on that at some point. But I think I've got a good idea of what we could do for the all-time rankings, or the all-time team, and then maybe even for the all-time rankings. We will utilize the website for that. That'll be good. But you can get a free mask, 35 teams available at voiceofcollegefootball.com. Go to register for free, and then you get the coupon. And also, again, if you don't want a mask, please still check us out at voiceofcollegefootball.com. I'm going to ask once again that you have team channels that you can lock in on. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, USC, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, the SEC, Texas A&M, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida. And if you just want to help us build the channel, please subscribe, especially at Nebraska, Florida State, Oklahoma, and Oregon. We need to get to 1,000 subs. I believe that's where it's going to be, Ronan. I believe. I'm not going to commit to Miami. All right, Ronan asking a good question here, because I don't want to annoy anybody out there with notifications all over the place, but that's just kind of how it works. Mark, just out of curiosity, I'm subscribed to all the channels, but had to turn off some notifications. Are there any videos you post on specific channels that don't make it to the main channel? That's a great question, Ronan. So here's the deal. And again, want to be fully transparent. I don't want somebody going to our Michigan channel and thinking there's going to be just all brand new content over there and then throwing up their hands saying, Mark, I can watch all this on your main channel. Here's the deal. This is what we do with these team channels. Okay. So, for example, a few hours ago, I posted the conversation with Ryan Abraham from USCFootball.com, and I posted the entire conversation here on the main channel. Then we will take the individual topics within that conversation, the quarterback, recruiting, offensive line, whatever it is, and make 4 or 5 separate topical videos and put those on the USC channel. So where that benefits anybody who just wants to see USC is that they don't have to weed through all my other videos on the main channel. They can just lock in on USC. But there is no separation of content except for if you just want to watch the quarterback discussion or the recruiting discussion or the Clay Helton discussion, you can do that. Now, the more popular that particular channel gets, the more I will tend to produce unique content for that channel. So, for example, there have been a lot of recruiting news with guys committing, and so I have posted videos on those channels that are just, hey, this guy committed to Oklahoma, this guy committed to Clemson, We also have done live streams, as you well know, Ronan, just on the Miami channel. That's the only place we've done that. What I really want to do, if you guys could help me out with this would be phenomenal. Once we get to the football season, you guys know what I'm doing all day on Saturday. I'm watching football and I'm going live. And if I have time, I'm doing an instant analysis recorded videos on particular games. What I would love to do is I would love to have a post-game show on every team channel. I'm not going to be able to make most of them. I can only be in one place at one time. And I got to be able to actually watch the football to a certain extent so I can talk about it. But I would love to get contributors who would go live on all those team channels following their game on Saturday or Thursday night or Friday night. That would be, I've been thinking about that. That hit me the other day. I thought, so that was a big long answer for you, Ronan. But basically, it's somewhere in the 95% range of being the same content, but I have produced videos for those specific channels. The more popular they get, and especially with all the recruiting news, commitments, and offers lists that I don't want to clutter up the main channel with. So I have posted, especially on the Michigan, Oklahoma, especially Michigan, Oklahoma, Florida State, some, Clemson, some. We are more and more producing unique content on those channels. And it will be such a great thing when Oklahoma and Nebraska and Florida State get monetized. That means 1,000 subs. All right. Thank you, Orange and Green Blood. Appreciate that. Ronan, OSU has been killed by everyone in the playoffs. Yes. Aside from 2017. Yes. Oh, you note that. Very good. Yeah. Sooner Thrawn. The team's LSU best was much better at Bama, win, kill top 5, Georgia, kill top 4, OU, dominated top 2, Clemson. That LSU run in 2019, I was talking to somebody on the phone the other day, somebody I don't know, but they know what I do. And so this guy's first question was, he said, who's the greatest college football team of all time? I went, no, I don't want to answer that question, but Ronan, you'll be pleased that I said 2001 Miami. And he said, not 2019 LSU, I'm an LSU grad. And I said, you guys did dust off the toughest schedule in college football history for a team that won all the games. David, you take care of business. Well, Ronan, I've been accused of producing too many videos at times that people can't keep up with them. Dennis, good point. So here's my take on 2014. Ohio State, to a certain extent, justified the committee's decision to let them in by winning the national championship. I think that's a decent argument. But when the committee selections were being made, of course, there's no hindsight to know who's going to win the national championship. So Ohio State bailed out the committee by winning the national championship and proving to be the best team in the country. Okay, that aside, going into the playoff, you had Florida State undefeated, and then you had 5 one-loss teams vying for 3 spots. So, again, I'm not the conventional thinker who was just focusing on Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor like everybody else was. I was also thinking Why is not Alabama being evaluated and Oregon being evaluated? They each lost one game as well. We've got 5 teams that lost one game. So why are not we having an argument over 3 spots and 5 teams, not 1 spot in 3 teams? So basically, Alabama and Oregon were given a pass in 2014, and it came down to, for most people, Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor. The Big 12 hurt itself by, number one, there was not the extra data point of a championship game. The Big 12 was still 3 years away from playing its first championship game, new version championship game. And then also the Big 12 could not decide who won. This is crazy to me that the Big 12, when it lost its championship game, what year was that? 2011? When the Big 12 lost its championship game because they lost teams to expansion elsewhere, did not make a rule to say this is how we're crowning our champion, which most likely would be head-to-head. Duh, they all play each other. So that's what it comes down to. So based on that criteria, Baylor should have been the outright Big 12 champion. But the Big 12 threw up their hands and said, we've got co-champions. Wrong move to make. So I had a YouTube channel then, and I was making the same claim. I was saying TCU and Baylor got ripped off. But if TCU would have been included in the playoff, then I would have said Ohio State and Baylor are getting ripped off. That's what's wrong with the system. That's what's wrong with the system that we have fixed with our playoff format. But yeah, somebody was going to get left out. And it was going to be 2 teams that were going to get left out that had similar criteria and similar resumes and achievements to the other teams. Just like in 2018, Oklahoma, Ohio State. (12-1) conference champ, 12-1 conference champ. Oklahoma, better loss against Texas that they got to avenge in the Big 12 championship game. Ohio State, worse loss, Purdue, 29 points. But Ohio State, better wins. Who do you include in the playoff? Well, the bad loss hurt Ohio State. Oklahoma was included. What did I sit here and say at the time? Ohio State got ripped off. Okay, people misunderstood me. I was very clear in saying if Ohio State was included in the 18 playoff, the 2018 playoff, I would have been saying Oklahoma got job. So it wasn't about Ohio State and Oklahoma. It was that the system sucks. I had this YouTube channel in 2013 into 2014 when the first playoff was announced and then put into effect. And people ask me, what do you think of the playoff? Well, what I think is that it's an improvement over the previous system for one basic reason. And that is that it affords 2 teams, 2 worthy teams who have championship caliber resumes to be included in the playoff. But they still don't understand math, apparently, because we've got 5 conferences. All right. Hopefully we can take this call at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hey, what's going on? I got you.
Oh, good. The phone works.
Yes, the phone.
I wanted to call in
yes.
and ask you, well, why are you debating between the wrong teams in 2018? It should have been between Ohio State and Notre Dame, shouldn't it have been? We should have been having Ohio State, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Alabama in the playoff.
Because Notre Dame does not play in the conference and did not play a 13th game.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just feel like whenever these kind of things come up, it's just my responsibility to remind everyone that.
Well, that's, and I typically do that myself, and that's a great point, and I'm not going to argue with you one bit, because I said that a million times at the time. This is where I stood on Notre Dame. Going into that season and going into that scenario, I always thought Notre Dame stacks their schedule with a quality schedule. They play a tremendous schedule. If they go undefeated, sure, they deserve it. I changed my mind. I don't change my mind very often, but I changed my mind that Saturday watching the conference championship games, watching Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12 championship game at noon, and then later that night, Ohio State and Northwestern in the Big 10 championship game, thinking both of these teams have to play quality opponents. They've already won their conference championship or are accomplishing that tonight, and having to play another quality opponent on their schedule while Notre Dame's sitting at home. Why? That should not be happening. And that's when I changed my mind.
You know what really got me? You know what really was getting me that season, and this didn't end up happening, but so Alabama went into their championship game with Georgia 12-0. But because of the layout of how many teams were all viable for a spot in the playoffs, you know, Ohio State, Oklahoma all both finished 12-1, Clemson 13-0, Notre Dame 12-0. A lot of media people types were saying that if Alabama went in there and lost to Georgia, who was also viable for the playoffs, that they shouldn't get in. They would have ended up with a 12-1 record, same as Oklahoma and Ohio State, but they shouldn't get in. And they're saying, oh, by the way, but Notre Dame is an automatic in. I'm just like, well, hold on a second. Alabama went 12-0 just like Notre Dame did.
Yeah.
Why are we saying that they need to go because they couldn't win their last game against an opponent way stronger than anything Notre Dame ever even sniffed for the entire year?
True.
Now, that didn't end up happening, but it would have been kind of, I think it would have been interesting to see what they would have done.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. And then what I was saying at the time, which actually I would have never guessed that it would have come into fruition just 2 years later. I was saying, as Clemson was beating the brains out of Notre Dame, I was saying this should have been the ACC championship game, is what this should have been. And then we would have had the 4 teams that you just mentioned that should have been in the playoff, because Notre Dame would have been sitting at home with a 12-1 record, having gotten their brains beat out in the ACC championship game, as they did 2 years later.
Don't you love how reality is irony? Because when that actually did come to pass 2 years later, and Clemson did play Notre Dame in the ACC championship game and beat the brains out, Notre Dame still got in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah.
That's funny.
It's too bad that only a fraction of the time do we get these scenarios to play out the way we want them to, for those of us who want to see difficulty, that want to see the committee really squirm and have to make a tough decision.
Mm-hmm. So I got an interesting one for you, Mark. You guys are kind of touching on it a little bit earlier. But people always love to say, oh, this team's the greatest team ever. Let's compare them against, like those early, 2000 Miami teams, or one or two of the Nebraska teams in the 90s. Let's compare LSU now or Alabama this year to one of them. Do you think they would win that? Which I always think is a ridiculous argument. The kind of football these teams are playing now is completely over the head of anything in the 90s. But what I do think is more interesting is if you do compare more recent teams against each other. No one's really everyone talks about, the debate is in between Alabama and LSU. 2020 Alabama, 19 LSU. Who's better?
Mm-hmm.
Shit. What's kind of funny is no one ever seems to want to mention 18 Clemson, the first team to go 15-0.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just sweep that aside for a second. I'm curious. If I did match up 2020 Alabama fully healthy with Waddle and Dickerson and all those guys against 19 LSU, who do you think would be would it be a coin flip? Do you think either of them would be favored? Do you think the line would be high on the other side? What do you think?
Oh, I think the line would be pick 'em or 1 or 2, and I think the over-under would be, or would they most likely be playing like a 45-42 game? So they'd be in the mid to high 80s. So you're not going to ask me who would win that game?
Yeah, that was my next question. I don't know if you've answered this question before. I imagine you've gotten it plenty of times.
Yeah, and I always duck it because I don't know.
Okay, you don't have to. I'm just going to say, I will throw out there that, you made the argument that run LSU made in 19 was legendary. And it was.
Yeah.
The schedule LSU ran through, for the most part, like a buzzsaw, was, way harder than what Alabama did in 2020, and certainly harder than what Clemson did in 18.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm willing to easily admit that, while also saying that to me, that's a different feat of strength than who was actually the better team, because Alabama's schedule was 100 times stronger than Clemson's in 18. Guess which team was better? So I'm easily willing to acknowledge that the 19 LSU team's accomplishments as far as their opponents was maybe the strongest schedule anyone's ever ran through and handled, for the most part, very easily. I'm just thinking 2020 Alabama, if I match them up against 19 Alabama, 2020's, with Mac Jones and all them are just running through or pushing 19 Alabama off the field by 15, 20 points.
Mm-hmm.
And that team almost beat LSU.
Yeah.
So, and I am a homer. Don't get me wrong. Everyone's all for Muslim say, "Oh, those coaches will blame a homer." Yeah, I am, and that matters in my opinion. But I think if anyone is objective about it, isn't automatically a hater. I just think it all comes down to, I think Steve Sarkisian's offense is better than what Mike Locksley was putting up with Tua, and I think it's at least on par with what Joe Brady was putting up there with Joe Burrow. I know he's not the offensive coordinator, quote, but wink, wink, yeah, but you know what I mean. And I don't know. I think it would be a real good game. But I think certainly Alabama's defense in 2020 was vastly improved by the end of the season.
So
than anything they had the last 2 years.
Both of those defenses were vastly improved from what they were earlier.
True.
And
I'm not sure how much better LSU's was at the end of the season compared to when they met Alabama in November.
Yeah. And my recollection of the LSU-Alabama game in 2019, I think the final was 46-41, that LSU got out to, what, a 20-point lead at halftime? It was like 33-13, something like that.
It was 30-13, I think it was.
Yeah. So Alabama did have a chance to win the game. It wasn't like they scored their last touchdown with 8 seconds left and it made it 46-41. They scored, correct, and they could have stopped LSU and gotten the ball back and won the game, but LSU like ran out the clock, something like that.
So what happened there was we clawed back to within one score.
Yeah.
And we had LSU at 3-10. I remember this very vividly because this was when the game was lost. We had them at 3-10. Joe Burrow has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So he lobs it. He lobs it. We did one of those horizontal passes all the way to the sideline. I don't know who was out there, but the guy had to catch it and run about 12 yards to get to the first down. We had this millennial, milk drinker, a diva named Trayvon Diggs.
Oh yeah.
Who meets him at I think the 2 or 3 yards past the line, and just gets dragged, whatever.
Yeah.
For the rest of the 7 yards to make a first down. It was other than like some tackling I've seen with Florida or Tennessee or that are epically bad at it. It was the worst tackle job I've ever seen in my life. I mean, even if you don't tackle him, at least stop him, get in his way, do something until someone else gets there to help you. Push him out of bounds. He was tightroping it. But yeah, that was where the game was lost. But by the by, like the 1 or 2 players we had opt out of the bowl game.
Yep.
Yeah, he was one of them.
Yep, I remember that. So you scored with 1:21 left to make it 46-41. You kicked an onside kick that LSU obviously recovered at the 49. Not a good first play because Edwards-Helaire went for 12 yards for a first down. Then you called a timeout. And then, okay, you must be thinking about the previous possession because basically...
I think, it's a possession or two before that.
Okay, Edwards-Helaire ran for a first down and the game was over because then they just took knees.
Right.
It was over, yeah.
This was like the only time where because at that point we were in the fourth quarter, we were just going back and forth. Whoever had the ball last. This was the time where we had them at 3rd and 10 and should have had a stop, and it would have given us a chance to actually take the lead for the first time.
Okay.
It was. I don't remember which possession it was. It was 1 or 2 before the last one.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I do think this year's Alabama team is better than what LSU faced in 19. If I had to pick, I think I would probably take 20. I think 2020 Alabama would probably win 6 out of 10 games. But I suppose my homerism is worth at least one victory.
I really can't separate the teams. I think it would come down to something that is difficult to evaluate at that high of a level, and that's how much the offensive and defensive lines, how well they would play against each other. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Najee Harris, if I had to choose one, I'm going to lean toward Najee Harris, but Edwards-Helaire is certainly off to a great start in the NFL. I'm going to lean Burrow just because he's more of a proven commodity than Mac Jones. The receivers are ridiculous.
He can run.
Yeah, and the receivers are ridiculous on both sides. Yeah.
It's a toughie. You mentioned O-line. I would feel the need to point out that Alabama's offensive line this year was just really something to behold. I mean, of course, everyone says, and I say it too sometimes, that Mac Jones is immobile. Well, do we actually know that, Mark? Have we seen him had to try to run away from anything? Can we say for certain he's not actually a great athlete that just never got a chance to show it,
Yeah, I got to say that even against Ohio State was missing one of their best tackles, an excellent All-American tackle. But Ohio State didn't have a devastating pass rush or pass rusher, but it was very good. It was still like top 10 to 15 good in the nation, like a lot of really talented D ends, but not the Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa guy had not emerged on that team. And Mac Jones he had all day. He was rarely hurried.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here, there was something else.
Oh, yeah. Now, they didn't
get when people try to say that, he won't have that
they didn't
in
really,
the NFL, but
they didn't really blast away in the running game. I thought Ohio State's run defense was pretty good in that game. Even Najee Harris said that.
He did, but you got to also keep in mind that when it shows Alabama's rushing yards, it's not taking into account all the receiving yards that Najee Harris had.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the running game. We
utilized him a lot different than most running backs.
Well, yeah.
He actually caught a lot of balls.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about Ohio State's run defense.
Okay, so you're talking about just specifically just against run plays?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was. Like I said, I think Alabama was more of a 2/3 passing offense, 1/3 running, and that's because they had the best running back in the country, in my opinion. But they also had to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. Anyway, that's all I got for you. I know you're probably tired of that topic.
No, not at all. That's why we're here.
Isn't that interesting, though, Mark, real quick before I go, that no one ever mentions 18 Clemson in this argument?
Well,
they're completely left out.
Clemson fans do.
Oh, well. I haven't heard, even from Clemson fans, I haven't heard them talk about that.
You know where Clemson would be hurt in that matchup is, maybe I'm generalizing a little bit too much and not dissecting each individual year and each individual Clemson team, but just generally their offensive lines have not been anywhere close to dominant. So I don't think that their offensive line would have done well against the other two teams.
Okay. Yeah. Perhaps. Trevor Lawrence is pretty slippery, though.
Yeah.
So I think he probably made up the difference there. Anyway, Mark, my wife got dinner on the table. Just wanted to call and say hey.
Oh, very nice. Enjoy dinner.
Okay, night.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, good stuff from Reasonable Gump, who likes his 2020 Crimson Tide over the 2019 LSU Tigers. Appreciate everybody jumping on board. I think we can pretty much call it a night with no more calls in queue. Let's see, this is Friday. So Saturday, tomorrow, yes, Florida State football at 5 o'clock. And we are going to go live after the Florida State spring game. So how about that? Oh, somebody's going to jump in with a call. Here we go. We'll take another one. Here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello, hello? Who's on the line? Okay. Call's been terminated. All right, so again, actually NC State, we got to give them their time as well. NC State's going to be on the ACC network at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Will I be watching? Should. Voice of College Football. I should watch the NC State spring game, but these spring games quickly remind me that they are spring games, scrimmages, practices. But NC State at 1 o'clock, Florida State at 5, and we'll be live right after. So about 7:30 Saturday night, we're here with you, talking Florida State football and anything that you would like to discuss, of course, in the game we all love. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. We will see you then. Do I take this call? I guess if they're calling back, I've got to honor that. Yes, who's on the line? That's weird. It's showing up here, but not showing up on the phone. So anyway, Reasonable Gump got it done. So looks like we are done for the night. We will see you talking Florida State football after the spring game, about 7:30 on Saturday night.